So, let us resume our discussion on mutual exclusion algorithms for distributed systems. We started with some examples of algorithms where you have to take permissions from other sites. Those were permission based algorithms. Then in the last class we looked at a token based algorithm, namely Suzuki Kisame algorithm, where the token is circulated among the different processes, and whichever process has the token at a given point of time can enter the critical section, right. Now remember that in the Suzuki Kisame algorithm also the message complexity was n. What is the message complexity? It is the number of messages that a site has to send before it can enter the critical section, right. So in the Suzuki Kisame algorithm, a site has to broadcast its request to all the other nodes. So if there are n nodes, then the message complexity is n. After broadcasting the messages, it has to do nothing else, because we know that the request will be loaded into the tokens request queue from some process wherever the token exists, and thereafter the token will circulate in the order in which processes are entered in its queue until it reaches the node which is requesting, right.
When LNI is equal to RNI, then that is an outdated request.
Then the request is outdated because it is already served.
I just don't understand the small point. Why should it be equal?
Okay, so what does LNI indicate? LNI indicates that the ith request, LNI is some number. Okay, suppose LNI is 5. That means for process Pi the 5th request has been served, right. And this LNI array is with the token. The token always knows which critical sections have been executed, right. So if the 5th request of process I has been served, then at that time after serving it, LNI will be updated to 5. Okay. Now if you see that in some node RNI is 5, then what does that mean? It says that the most recent request that node received from I was 5, and you know that you have already served 5, so there is no need to visit 5 once again. Now if you see that RNI is 6, then you know that there is a request which has not yet been served, because LNI is 5, RNI is 6, then there is a pending request. Then I will be entered into the queue of the token, so that somewhere down the line the token will visit the node I. Okay. Yes.
Earlier timestamp doesn't mean that the request will be executed earlier. Then how can you guarantee that there is no starvation?
Right. So that's a good question. In this algorithm, as you can see, that there is no timestamp as such, right. So the only timestamp is the sequence numbers that we give, but there is no relative ordering between the requests made in different processes. So his question is, how do we guarantee that a particular node does not starve, right. Now to see that it does not starve, let us look at the following scenario. Suppose we are talking about SI, the node SI, and we want to show that when it makes a request it will not starve, right. Now this is the rest of the nodes, and somewhere some Sj is holding the token. So currently the token is here. Okay. Now when SI makes a request, it will broadcast its request to everybody. So it is going to send it to every node including Sj, right. Now, if when this request reaches Sj, if the token is still with Sj, Sj will update this request into the tokens queue. Why? Because Sj will see that lni, the lni value at the token is 1 less than this one, because this is a new request. So, it will see that Rn I at j is 1 less than 1 more than this. So, it will update the queue of the token by appending Si into the queue, right, and then the token in due course of time will come to Si, because the token is forwarded by choosing the nodes from the queue in first out order, right. Now, what you might say is that, well, when the request reaches Sj, at that time the token may have moved. Now, even if the token has moved to some other Sk, that Sk will have received this request, and that Sk will see that Rn ki is 1 more than lni, and it will update this request in the tokens queue. Oh yes, it guarantees. See, being in the tokens queue means that the token moves from one node to another by choosing the next node from the queue. So, the token sees its queue. Okay. When it is done in one side, it will choose the first node from the queue, and then it will be forwarded to that node, right. So, if you are in the queue, the token will eventually come to you, right. Are there any other doubts about this algorithm? Your doubt is also clear, or it is unrelated to this? Okay. So, now what we will do is we will start looking at another algorithm which tries to improve upon the fact that the Suzuki Kisame algorithm has to broadcast the request to all nodes, right. So, we are going to look at another algorithm where we will be able to have a smaller message complexity. In other words, we do not have to send messages to everyone. Now, one standard thing that we always use in order to restrict the amount of message traffic is use trees. So, remember that we had an algorithm, we studied an algorithm some time back, where instead of broadcasting messages, the things were sent along the edges of a tree. That was the improvement on Floyd-Warshall's algorithm, by which we were able to only route the routing tables along the edges of a tree. So, here also what we will do is we will form a directed tree which is logical. Physically there is no tree, this is logical regardless of the underlying network. Okay. Forms a directed tree with the token holder as the root. Now, the token, whenever it moves, will cause the tree to be readjusted in such a way that the holder of the token will always be the root of the tree. Okay. And it is a directed tree where the token holder is the root. So, the token holder has out degree 0. Out degree of the token holder is always 0, because it is the root of the out degree is 0. Okay. That is how, yes, that is how it will be organized. Okay. Every node has one pointer pointing to its parent. Every node only knows its parent. A node does not know which children it has, it knows only its parent. Okay. each node has a variable holder that points to its parent on the path to the root. Okay, and root's holder variable points to itself because it is in degree 0, rather out degree 0. So, the root's holder variable points to itself, right. Each node I has a FIFO request queue Qi. All right. So, let's draw the structure. We have the root which contains the token, okay, and all the other nodes, they are organized in the form of a tree with the holder as the root. Okay. So, these are the holder pointers. And for this, the holder points to itself. So, in other words, every node knows the direction in which the token is there, and it will use that direction to forward its request, right. Now, let us go to the next. To request critical section, a node will send request to the parent on the tree, provided I does not hold the token currently and Qi is empty. What is Qi? Qi is the list of requests that are stored at node I. Okay. So, yes.
So, this is the shortest path tree like that we constructed before, same sort of tree.
What do you mean by shortest path tree?
They can be neighbors of, and there is some transversal thing going on before.
No, 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 no. There is no, these two are unrelated. This is just a tree. It's an unweighted tree. So, there is no such thing as shortest path or anything. It is an unweighted tree, logical tree. Okay.
But
So,
there can be multiple such trees.
no, no, no. We are going to logically order all the nodes in the system in the form of a tree, and that tree will continuously restructure and reorient itself as the token moves from node to node. Okay. Yeah. We are going to come to that later. Let us first see that at some point of time we have a tree just like I showed, rooted at some node, right. Now, let us go through the mutual exclusion algorithm first, then we are going to talk about the origin of the thing. I mean, when all the nodes come up, how do you create the tree? Okay. To request the critical section, a node will send a request to the parent on the tree, provided that it does not hold the token currently, provided that it is not the holder of the token and Qi is empty. Okay. Then place request in Qi. Okay. When a non-root node receives a request from I, it places the request in Qj and sends request to parent if no previous request is sent. Now, let us understand this very clearly. Now, here is an intermediate node. Okay. Now, when this one receives a request from some node down below, then it is going to send a request to its parent, provided that it has not already sent a request. Now, see, these requests are not tagged with who is the originator of the request. That is not important. All that is important is that this node knows that the process this is the process I. Okay. So, this node knows that the process I has made a request and it will put that request in its queue qj, right, and it is going to send a request for the token to its parent, right. When the token comes, it will then see that who is waiting. So, it will see that the process I had made a request, so it will send the token down again here. Okay, that is what is going to happen later. Right now it just sends the request to its parent. Clear? When the root receives a request,
So along the particular path, there will be only one request that will.
there is only one request. So either somebody down the line wants that.
Send the request, then no one up can send the request thereafter.
No, they can.
Because it says that
That request will not be separately forwarded, but they can update that request in their own queues.
No, because it says in last slide said that QI should be empty, then only it can to request critical section not hold it open and QI is empty.
It will send the request to parent on the tree provided I does not hold the token currently and QI is empty.
But if it's received a request from somewhere below,
Then
there will be a request in QI, where will not be empty.
right.
So then it can't send a request from
It already sent.
It will not.
No, it has already sent a request, but it will place the request in QI. Let us understand. Let me take an example. This is the root which is holding the token. Okay. Now, somewhere down here, this SI has made a request to SJ. Okay. Now, what is SJ going to do? SJ will put SI's request in its queue. Which is this queue? This is QJ, right, and it will forward a request to its parent. Okay. It will forward a request to its parent. Now, this request, after it has gone, if subsequently SJ wants to make another request, it will not send a request again, but it will put SJ here. Similarly, suppose there is another child of SJ called SK, and SK also sends a request, then SJ will put SK here, but it will not send another request. See, because the request stating SJ's have taken back to have. Okay. Now, whether it is for serving one request or 5 requests, that is not important. It wants the token, that is all. Okay. When SJ gets the token back, it will first send it to SI, because that is in the beginning of the queue. Okay. So, let us see the algorithm once again. To request the critical section, send request to parent on the tree, provided I does not hold the token currently and QI is empty, right. Then place request in QI. When a non-root node J receives a request from I, then place request in QI and place request in QJ rather, and then send request to parent if no previous request has been sent. But this is important, that the request is placed in QJ. When the root receives a request, this is what it is going to do. It will send the token to the requesting node, okay, and set holder variable to point to that node. Now, this is where the reorientation of the tree starts. Let us see it pictorially once again. So, this was the root, and these were suppose this was the tree. Now, there is a request which goes from here. What it is going to do? It will send the token to this node, right, and set its holder variable to point to this, right. So, what's the thing going to happen here? These are going to remain as it is, unaffected. These are also going to remain unaffected. Okay. This is still going to be here because the token is in transit. The holder variable of this will point to this, and now the token will be sent from this to this. On receiving the token, this one will make this one not point to this anymore, but make it point to itself, its holder variable, right. Once that is done, you can see that this is now a tree which is rooted here, right. This is now a tree which is rooted in this node. Okay. So, let us look at that part of the algorithm. When a node receives the token, can I have the computer please? When a node receives the token, delete first entry from the queue, okay, then send token to that node, set holder variable to point to that node, and if the queue is non-empty, send a request message to the parent node pointed by the holder variable. Now, this is the case where the node receives the token and it does not have its own request on the queue, right. Then it is going to, if it is the first element, then this is the thing that I said will happen, right. Otherwise, what is it going to do? It is going to delete the first entry from the queue, send the token to that node, set the holder variable to point to that node, and if queue is non-empty, send a request message to the parent node pointed by holder variable. Okay. Right. Why is this being sent? It has to get the token back, right. So, that is very important. Now, before we proceed, okay, to execute the critical section, the algorithm will enter if token is received and own entry is at the top of the queue, and then delete the entry from the queue. To release the critical section, if queue is non-empty, delete first entry from the queue, send token to that node, and make holder variable point to that node, right. If queue is still non-empty, send a request message to the parent node pointed at by holder variable. Is that understood? Right. Now, before we proceed further, let us go through a complete running of the algorithm, so that we are absolutely clear that we understand exactly how this is moving around. So, let us start with this example. So, initially let us say that this is the root, it has the token, Now, let us say that we start by saying that this node makes a request. Okay. So, let me number this node. So, this is 1, 2, 3, this is 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So, let us say 1 makes a request, right. So, what is going to happen here in this queue, that is Q1, one's request will be entered, right. Now, this request, the request will be sent to 3. Okay. What will 3 do? 3 will record this request Q3, it will record this request, that is 1, all right, and then send a request here, right. Now, let us say 2 makes a request, okay, or let us say, okay. So, this is going to go here, maybe this was is in critical section. So, what will happen in Q4, we will enter 3, 3, right. Why 3? Because it got a request from 3. Now, let us say that at this point of time 7 makes a request, right. So, what will we have? We will have in Q7, we will have 7, right, and 7's request will go to 5. Now, what will 5 do? It will put in Q5 the request from 7 and it will forward this request, right, and this one will note that 5 has requested, right. Let us say that now 2 makes a request, okay. So, when 2 makes a request, we will have in Q2, we will enter 2 and this request will be sent to 3. What is Q3 going to do? It is going to take note that 2 has made a request, but it is not going to forward the request again because it has already made a request, right. Now, let us say Q4 is done with its critical section. So, what is it going to do? It is going to see that, okay, 3 made a request. So, token has to be sent to 3, right. So, it will send the token to 3 and make its own holder variable, which was previously pointing to itself. It is now going to take this off and make it point to 3, right, send the token to 3, but it also has another request in its queue. So, it will also put a request here, right, and that request will be noted by Q3. So, Q3 will note that here I have a request from 4. Okay. So, let me redraw the scenario now. Under the circumstances, let me redraw the scenario so that we have more clarity. So, now 4 does not have the token anymore. Okay. The node 3 has the token. So, this node has the token 3. Q3 has 1, 2, 4 in its request queue, right. The holder variable of 4 is now pointing here, right. There is a pending request along this, right, and rest of the tree remains as it is. So, we had this 1 and 2 here, and we have 5 and let me take down the status of the queues. So, Q7 has 7 because 7 had sent a request. Okay. Q5 has 7, Q4 has only 5 now, right. Q2 has 2 and Q1 has 1. Okay. And what are the pending requests? There is a request from here, there is a request from here, and then there is a request from here and here, right. And the new request that has been added is force request to 3 because it wants the token back, so that it can pass it to 5 later. Now, what does 3 do? 3 says that it is not one of the requesting sites, it does not want to enter the critical section, but so it picks up the top one from here, which is 1, and sends the token to 1, right. And corresponding to that, what is it going to do? So, this edge will now point in the other direction because 3 will make its holder point to 1, right. And also this will be taken off Q3, but it still has pending requests. So, it will send a request, and what will Q1 do? Q1 will record that request here, and now the token is with Q1, right. Token is not here anymore. What is Q1 going to do? It will see it is at the top of its request is at the top of its queue. So, it will execute the critical section. It will execute the critical section, and then it will see 3 requires the token. So, it will send the token to 3, okay, and send its holder variable in this direction. Token moves from here to here again, but now 1 is not going to make another request because its queue now is empty. So, there is no more request here. Now, what does 3 do? 3 sees that 2 is the next in its queue. So, it removes this and sends the token to 2, right. Again the token is not here, it is here, right. And it also puts a request here because there is a pending request here for 4. When 2 completes and then sends the token back to 3. Why? Because when 3 made the request, that request was recorded here. So, when 2 is completed, it sends the token back to 3. Now, 3 has the token and it says 4 is the requesting node. So, it sends the token to 4, okay. Token is here, and does 3 make another request? No, because its queue is now empty, right. Now, 4 will send the token to 5, 5 will send the token to 7, 7 will execute the critical section, and we are done. It is not fair in the sense that 7 made the request earlier, but it is getting it after this, right. But the question that you have to answer is, will 7 get the token in finite time? It is not fair, understood, but is there starvation? How?
If the nodes which are near the node which is holding the token, keep on making a request and then keep on addressing that those nodes. But if we
see, the request will always move up the tree towards the token, right. So, so there it is going to get recorded somewhere. That subtree that the token has to go to, that subtree will be recorded at some point of time, right, and thereafter it is going to move down that tree, right. So, it is not very obvious, but you try to think about it and try to convince yourself that the token will eventually move towards that, and who knows, there might be a mid-sem question on that, right, that to show that it is eventually going to go to that node, right. Now, we want to sum up this algorithm and whatever we have done in the mutual exclusion topic by looking at, okay, let us first look at the complexity of this. For this algorithm, the average message complexity is order of log n, assuming that the height of the tree on an average will be log n, right, but in the worst case it can become order n kind of thing also. Yeah, I mean that again is an interesting question. Does the algorithm maintain a balance in the tree, or can it become can you create a sequence of requests such that the tree becomes a linear skewed tree, okay. No, it became because I chose the tree with a little bit of skew, right, but in general you have to see that can you create a pathological case where the sequence of requests come in such a way that the tree becomes skewed.
The diameter of the tree is, we are fixing diameter of tree, the message number of it cannot be more than that of diameter. And diameter we can always fix to log n.
No, that is understood, but the question is that can it become so skewed at any point of time, right. So, we will leave that question open for the time being. The assuming that it does not get skewed, the average message complexity will be order of log n, because the height will be order of log n. And the synchronization delay, which is the delay between the exit of one critical section and entry into the critical section of the next process, is t log n by 2, where t is the maximum message delay. Why is this t log n by 2? See, the token in the worst case will have to traverse from the root to a leaf, right, but that is not the average, okay. So, it comes to half of that, right. No, not no, yeah, if it becomes skewed, linear and all that, then from one end to another is order n. Now, let us quickly do a comparison of the algorithms that we have studied so far in terms of these the parameters that we compare these algorithms with. So, remember what are the different parameters that we talked about for characterizing the mutual exclusion algorithms. Let me quickly brush through that once again. So, we had defined terms like response time, synchronization delay, etc. So, we had defined this, that for a process, this is where the CS request arrives, then request messages sent out, then let us say this is where site enters CS, this is where the site exits CS, this is the CS execution time. Right, and this is called the response time. Okay. And in another besides this, the other parameter that we looked at was the synchronization delay. So, one site exits CS, and this is where next site enters CS. Then this is called the synchronization delay. Okay. Right. Now, let us compare the algorithms that we have studied in this chapter based on these parameters. So, first we are going to look at the non-token algorithms. And let us look at the response time, the synchronization delay, the message complexity, okay. And there are two types of message complexity that we are talking about here, under low load and the message complexity under high load, LL and HL. Okay. Because there are some algorithms which behave a little differently given the load on the system, like Maikwa's algorithm, because it has more probability of deadlock when you have high load. So, let us look at the different algorithms. So, for Lamport's algorithm, what is the response time? So, that is twice T plus E. What is T? The maximum message delay, okay. And what is E? CS execution time. So, the response time is twice of T plus C. Why is it twice of T? Request sent out, replies received, okay. So, that is why it is twice T plus C. What is the synchronization delay? T, because the release message will have to reach the next site. What is the message complexity? Thrice of n minus 1. What is the and that is the same for low or high, because it does not distinguish between these two scenarios, right. So, this is 3n minus 1, right. Now, what about Reichardt-Agarwala? What is the response time? 2t plus E, because again request and reply, okay, then it enters the critical section. So, 2t plus C. Synchronization delay is T, number of messages 2n minus 1. Okay. Now, let us look at this is 2 T plus E again, because you have to send request to your request set, get the responses back from your request set. So, that is the amount of delay. Synchronization delay 2T. Why? Because the mediator will get the release and then give the permission to the next one. Right? For Si and Sj, the intersection of Ri and Rj will get the release and then give the permission to the other side. What is the message complexity? Under low load, if you do not use the deadlock detection, 3 root n. Otherwise, if you use deadlock detection, you will have those additional inquire and yield or failed messages. So, that is going to take 5 root n number of messages. Okay. Now, that is with the token based algorithms. Now, let us look at the non token based algorithms. Let us quickly look at the token based ones. So, for the token based ones, we first have Suzuki Kisame. So, here also we have 2T plus C. Why? You send the request and get the token and then start executing the critical section, right. Synchronization delay T, okay. Messages N, because it has to broadcast it to everyone. I mean order N. Low load, high load, same thing, right. Now, let us look at Raymond's algorithm, the one that we saw, the tree based algorithm. So, this is T log n, this is the time that it takes for the requests to go up, and then E, order of T log n, okay, plus E. Then synchronization delay is T log n by 2.
Sir, in Suzuki Kisame,
Just 1 minute, let us finish Raymond's. For Raymond's, the message under low load is log n, under high load it is now. This is very interesting. Should it be anything different? I have a little bit of doubt here. The book says that this is 4. Yeah. Now, surely that must be a typo. How does Ackermann function help here? I think what might happen is that if it is high load, then most of the requests are already there, right. So, for your request, it just goes to your neighbor, right. So, that is one thing, the token coming to you is 1, okay, and then you are releasing the token. I think that is how the 4 figure will come. I am not very sure about this, right. Maybe we can have a discussion later and figure out how we get this figure of 4, but most likely it is just the just because all the requests are already there. So, no further requests will be created except the request from the node to its parent, right. That is why this is going to be 4 under high load. Most likely that is the reason. I will check it out and maybe we can discuss that offline sometime later, but it is certainly very interesting to see how we get a constant number 4 out here. Huh? Order of 1. Okay. So, that is it. I think we are done with the chapter on mutual exclusion, and we are going to start studying some different classes of algorithms, more generic algorithms for another set of computations which we will talk about in due course of time. So, we will start that discussion from the next class.